Guys, what's going on? Andrew coming at you, and in this one I'm trying something new. This is going to be my first attempt at a podcast. Now, let me just get the important information out of the way in case this is not something that you're interested in. I'm committing to doing content still about Sweden, and the next episode is going to come up on there on Wednesday. Maybe I have a bonus episode, but I'm committing to Wednesdays, having new content coming out for Sweden. So if that's something you're interested in, I haven't forgotten about you guys. Check that out on Wednesdays. I need to kind of have a format where I have a schedule, so that's something I'm committing to this year, moving into now my third year of having a YouTube channel. So thanks for that. But when I was in high school, I had a podcast that I tried. It was like 5 episodes I did, and I blended like current events, and I added some comedic elements into it, and I actually found the old episodes over Christmas break, and it just made me laugh and realize how much I enjoyed doing a podcast. And I've been wanting to do something that's a little bit of a longer format. So I want to try a podcast about once a month right now. I'm just going to call this Andrew's Podcast. I realize that I'm not maybe the most entertaining person in the whole entire world, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. In this episode, I'm going to talk about a couple current event things, things in the news, things like that. I want to talk about my goals for this year, and I want to talk about some of my favorite books, video games, movies, if you're looking for recommendations. But there's been enough of you guys when I have content that comes out where I'm talking about my life, and it's not particularly always about exactly Sweden, and there's enough interest for that. I asked on Instagram, and I had 11 people respond to me and say they would really like a podcast, which I'm not so big on Instagram, so that was actually a lot of feedback for me, so I thought that was great. So we're going to go ahead and try this. If you like this kind of stuff, I would love it if you give me a like or give me some kind of feedback so I know, positive or negative, because I do want to make it well. I have to do it a little bit of a different background here right now than what I normally do because I'm missing some equipment, but that'll change in the later videos. I didn't mean to go away for so long. When I decided to take a step back from YouTube, it was just kind of a perfect storm because I went to my girlfriend's parents' house for Christmas, and then my cousin came to visit from the United States, which was a really fun experience, which I had that video, and it was awesome. But after I made that video about taking a step back, I actually got really, really sick. I got bronchitis, and it knocked me out for about a week and a half, and it just made it very difficult. You know, ain't nobody got time for that. And so just made me take a step back. But I wanted to try a podcast. I would have loved to have a Swedish content first, but I'm just feeling inspired to do this today. You know, I love that so many people in my audience are Swedish and that people want to learn about Sweden, and I've been helpful with that. But as a YouTuber, you have to try new stuff because you start to get burned out. Like, if all I'm ever going to be is just a YouTuber that just talks about Sweden constantly, like, I'm going to get burned out and bored. And if I'm bored doing that, I think you, the audience, are going to kind of see that. And, you know, I don't want to do that. So that's why I'm coming out with this kind of content. And also, when I started meditating, I talked about this before, doing the daily meditation, which I highly recommend trying. It's not like some kind of crazy cult thing. It's just you're learning more about how you think. I'm the type of person that puts so much effort into what I do that, like, I was so concerned with being successful on YouTube or on my YouTube channel that I was making it not fun. I wasn't taking chances. I would create a video, and then all of a sudden I would like look at my numbers and be like, oh my gosh, my numbers have to be so awesome. That I realized I needed to take a step back and just look at my life and how awesome it is. You know, I have an awesome job. I have an awesome girlfriend. I have an awesome family. So many things are going great in my life, and if I don't take the time to enjoy that now, what's the point of being successful if I'm not enjoying my life? So it's not that I don't want to have that same kind of mentality of being a hardworking person. I just don't want it to be the #1 thing over everything that I do, because it's not healthy, and you really have to be okay with your life now. I said that before in a previous video. It's okay to want to change and be better. For any of you out there that maybe you're not happy where you are, you can definitely change that. And I'm not saying that you just, so for example, maybe if you're overweight and you want to lose weight, I'm not saying that you have to just be okay with being overweight, but at the same time, you have to be okay with who you are. You have to love yourself, and you have to be okay with the version of yourself that you are and love yourself, and still make those next steps. And I just realized that personally, I was working so hard on YouTube that there were things in my personal life that I wasn't taking care of as much. Over the last 2 years, I probably have put on more weight than I normally did because I quit snooze, and that was just something that happened. So I've actually changed my diet up. I'll go into that in my New Year's goals. And, you know, it just, now I'm feeling much better and excited for the future. So let's move on here. First thing I kind of wanted to talk about was just two things recently in the news I wanted to comment on, because I think you guys might enjoy my perspective and opinion on this. And the first one is going to be the Kevin Hart situation. Kevin Hart said some things, you know, not particularly nice about homosexuals and gay people about, I want to say 10 years ago at this point, commenting on it if his son was gay. And he claimed for this to be a joke. And this came back up recently when he was announced to be in the Oscars. And apparently, and I could be wrong on some of this, so you guys can comment below. I'm just doing the best from what I know. He apologized for it in the past. And when it came back up again, he eventually had to step down from the Oscars. And when he was asked to like apologize again and again, he started to refuse to apologize because he said he apologized for it in the past. And I found this one to be very, very interesting because I'm going to more comment just on the time period that we live in now. It doesn't matter if people are on like the right or the left politically. I feel like we're living in a time now where if someone disagrees with someone else, they get a job, a career. You're just such under a microscope. People are going through everything that you've said to find something wrong. And if I'm going to be honest, 10 years ago, I'm sure I said things that to today's standards would not be considered well. I'll give you an example. You know, when we were in high school, we used to say something was gay. If we thought it was lame or silly or stupid, we said that it was gay. And although I'm not like a big fan of censorship, as I got older and had, you know, friends that are gay and you know, family members that are gay and things like that, and learning from that, I started to take a step back and realize that every time I was saying something was gay, I was putting something negative to something that isn't negative. And it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't like I wanted to do it. It was just how society had changed. And so I have chosen to kind of take that out of my vocabulary because I don't think being gay is something that should be negative, and I feel bad that that's the way I spoke. And I think about like when I was in high school, that was just normal, or it was normal to use I won't use this word, but the F word for someone that is gay. That was normal conversation to use back then. And just, I'm trying to put my mindset that if I was gay, how horrible I would feel hearing those type of words. So I think as a society, it's not necessarily a bad thing that we're evolving and growing in the language that we use. Maybe sometimes we can go too far and try to censor people. And this is not necessarily about censorship. This is about evolving for me. And so I think that people, famous people, anybody, we have to be okay with people making mistakes and growing. Because I can tell you, I'm a different person than I was 10 years ago. And so I can't look at someone like Kevin Hart for what he said and then hold it against him now if he already apologized for it. We are kind of growing and learning with this whole social media thing about like how it works. And I think that we are now communicating at such a high level that if you are a kid nowadays or something like that, everybody really, you're eventually going to say something maybe on social media that you regret. Maybe something 10 years from now is something that you might say now that you regret because of the times changing. And we have to be able to forgive as a society and grow. Something has happened the last couple years where people are on their team, and I think it's very, very dangerous. Like, I think that most people can see some things from the right perspective and some things from the left perspective. And when you're so on your team and you're looking to attack someone, it's just not the kind of world that I want to live in. If we can't forgive each other, if we can't grow as people, that to me is kind of an immaturity thing. I think that people should stand for what they say. I'm not saying that you could just say stuff and, you know, wipe your hands clean and then not take responsibility for it. But especially with comedy, I would just think nowadays trying to navigate this world as a comedian would be very, very difficult because jokes that hit 10 to 15 years ago that had shock value, they just don't hold up to today's standards and can be seen as offensive. So that's my comments there. I think we need to grow as a society, but, you know, always I would be interested to hear what you guys think on this. That's when it's interesting. The second one I want to talk about is the Gillette commercial that came out, because I've kind of heard both perspectives on this. And when I heard about the Gillette commercial, I heard a lot of men were upset by this commercial, and that it was attacking all men, saying all men are doing wrong things and things like that. And I watched the commercial, and I actually found it to be quite powerful, and especially with like the Me Too movement stuff, and I wasn't offended by it. I didn't feel like it was attacking all men. I actually saw the commercial as men, we have to stand up against other men and call them out on what they're doing and what's being wrong. Now, you guys can give your perspective below, but it just wasn't a big deal. But I do want to comment on one thing, because the one thing I will say that I've experienced as a YouTuber myself is, if I have an opinion that's maybe different from someone else's opinion, especially as a YouTuber, I've called out some things in the United States that I think could be better. Some things that maybe could be better, like healthcare, things like that. I've done videos on that, or I'll talk about things here in Sweden, that I think it could be better. And one of the top comments I'll get is I'll be called a snowflake. I'll be called something that says I'm less than a man, and that everybody in Sweden is less than men. And that's something that I don't understand to the core. Attacking people's masculinity, saying, "Oh, you're not a man if you think this way." It's just, in my opinion, kind of immature, and that's one of the negative things that I don't like that men are saying to other men, that being a man means you have to be this way, or you're a sissy, or things like that. So that's just something that I don't agree with. Wanting to have full health care for everybody in the United States does not mean that I'm a soy boy. Like, that's what I get hearing. Soy boy would mean that I have less testosterone in my body because I drink soy milk. Those are the kind of things I'm getting. I also think, like, wanting to fist fight another guy, to me, has always been not being a man. Like, getting in a physical altercation with another person, a fist fight, always drives me nuts, because I'm like, I don't get it. It's like, hey, I'm going to punch you in the face until you agree with me, or you punch me in the face until one of us passes out. I just never thought that was a mature thing to do. I understand sports. I understand, I'm not attacking, like, masculine energy. I'm just saying that, like, we have to be able to evolve, and we have to look at some things not being right. It's not every guy. And we just need to be able to, like, move forward as a society. So those were my 2 comments on there. I'd be very, very happy to hear what, you guys think. And let's move on to the next topic. So I want to talk about my goals for this next coming year. Now, I've been doing YouTube for 2 years, and, like, my channel in this year, 2018, hit over 1,000 subscribers, and now we're over 4,000 subscribers. My goal would be to try to get it 10,000. From what I can understand with YouTube, if you can hit 10,000 subscribers, you have, like, a big enough audience. So if you guys ever want to help me out, when you like videos, when you share my videos, and comment on the videos, that really, really helps me out a lot. But just anything, like, if you're going to give me feedback on what you think could be better, I really appreciate all of that. I read all the comments, the negative comments and the positive comments. If a comment is negative, and it's just negative for the sake of being negative, I don't really read it. But if it's negative and it's constructive criticism, I look at that, because, I watch YouTubers and things like that as well, and especially some of them that are small, and I can see the little steps they can do to make their content better. So I'm always open for that. So I want to commit to more of a schedule, like I said. I want to have content every Wednesday, and I want to try this podcast format once a month. And I would love to interview people. Maybe some of the topics would be on things happening in Sweden, current events on Sweden. So I'll find ways to, like, put Sweden in there, and we'll move forward from there. One interesting thing that's happened to me too is my Swedish has gotten a lot better. I was sick this week, and I wasn't at work and things like that, and I went to the Vard Central, and I tried to speak English at the front counter, or I didn't really speak English. She just spoke to me, and she wasn't, like, necessarily super nice. And then I switched to Swedish, and she helped me with everything. Like, she wasn't helpful at all. She helped me with everything. And so when I went to talk to the doctor, I just decided, let's try to stay in Swedish. So I said to her, I'm going to stay in Swedish, and words I can't say in Swedish, I'll switch to English. And I had the whole visit, and then when I left, I just felt this sense of, like, power. Like, oh my gosh, like, I took this chance, and I did it. I went to a doctor's office, and I stayed in Swedish. Like, my Swedish is getting better. Because there's really a lot of times where I'm not 100% sure it is, and I can feel kind of unconfident about that. But it was really awesome. So another one of my goals is to really work on my Swedish and continue to work on it. I don't know if it's going to be with classes, but just kind of immersing myself more with the language and trying to speak Swedish, because sometimes I can be lazy, especially very early in the morning. If I'm communicating with someone early in the morning in my job or just in life in general, like I'm here in Sweden and it happens, I will sometimes just not have the mental energy to speak Swedish. And when I force myself to do it, it's awesome. Another one, and I'm sure my girlfriend will love this one, is trying to speak more to her in Swedish, because a lot of times I'll come home from work and I'm tired in my head because I've been trying to speak Swedish the whole day, and I don't want to speak to her in Swedish, and I'll switch to English. But again, it's another easy way for me to learn the language. So that's another thing that I really need to take care of and I need to work on. But I'll work on that one in the future. But one of the lifestyle changes I wanted to work on, as I said, as well, is my running. Running for me is my passion. I love it. But when I put on weight over the last 2 years of quitting snooze, I slowed down a lot. I used to be able to run a 5K in 19 minutes and 30 seconds. And I'm 31 years old, but I don't feel like I should have lost that speed just yet, because most runners tend to be at their peak in their prime by 35 years old. So I started looking at some of my dietary plans and decisions. And an example, like just little things would add up, like drinking orange juice every morning. I drink like 4 cups of coffee a day, and I was adding cream in my coffee. And once every 2 weeks or so, I'll drink or something like that. And I realize now, to be in the kind of runner shape that I want to be in, to be kind of the physical shape I need to be in, life is just going to be so much easier if I make lifestyle changes. So in my New Year's resolution really is, I'd like to run a marathon again, and I'd like to run it at a better time. I need to run a marathon, I believe, in 3 hours and 5 minutes, which means I got to cut off 55 minutes for my time to qualify for Boston. I don't know if I can do it this year, but I know that losing weight is going to be one of the key things. So I stopped putting cream in my coffee. I stopped drinking orange juice, and I'm already starting to feel much, much better. I stopped eating candy on the weekends. Just those little dietary decisions I was making, because I never craved candy, but when I quit snooze, I grew a sweet tooth, which is a very normal thing that can happen. So that's another one of my goals. And then I also want to stick with the daily the daily meditation. I stepped out of meditation for a couple of days, though. I got to be honest, because when I got sick, I found it hard to meditate and focus on my breathing because I couldn't breathe that well. But I meditated daily for like 90 days. So these times where I stopped meditating, I realized something interesting. My brain was permanently changed. Like, I really had very little stress. It really amazed me that I had that to do that. They've done these scientific studies that say after 8 weeks at 10 minutes a day, you can see these changes. But I literally just, the voice that was in my head that was constantly worrying and thinking went away. And I have to keep up with the daily meditation, because I'm sure the changes I've done to my brain can come back if I don't use it. But I was never aware before how much I was thinking, just being lost in my own head. And to be able to change that it's really freed me up to enjoy my life more. I've started playing video games, and when I'm playing the video games, I'm really in that video game. Like, I'm having so much fun, and it just feels very nice. Or even reading a book. Like, I used to read a book, and as I'm reading the book, my mind would wander. So I challenge you to do that. Maybe try not to think for 30 seconds. Pause this video now. Try not to think for 30 seconds to come back. What you probably notice is if you try to do it for 30 seconds or a minute, you'll start to wonder. That's something you're doing all the time that people really don't realize. And just being able to hone in on the thinking more and realize when you're thinking it's just a thought is a very powerful thing. Because someone with anxiety, I could sometimes just think about everything that's going wrong in my life and all the things that makes me nervous or worried. And I could get just lost in this negative thought loop. And I don't have to be there. You don't have to have that mental kind of suffering. So when you can realize that it's just a thought and you can stop it, man, it's really an incredible tool to have. Moving on, I want to talk about my favorite books of 2018. I'm going to pick a book this year. I'm going to pick a movie this year I really enjoyed, and I'm going to pick a video game that I enjoyed. Not everything that I'm picking necessarily came out in 2018. Now, one of my goals with reading from the previous year, I didn't put it in this year's resolution because I think it's better to focus on a couple things. I had a goal to read 2 books a month, or a total of 24 books. And I hit 23 complete books, and about 7 books I didn't finish. So for me, I'm going to count that as 24. Also, some of those books were audiobooks that I consumed as well, but I don't think that matters as much if you're focusing in on it, because some of the books I actually read were better in audio format because there was extra content included. But my favorite fiction book that I read this year was Stephen King's, I have it here, Stephen King's Misery. I really love this book. I know the movie's fantastic, but you get to be in the character's head. That's the benefit of reading fiction, I think, is you get the benefit of knowing what the character is thinking. And you don't always get that in movies unless there's a narrator or something like that. And in this book, when this character is trapped, and there's no spoilers here really, but when this character is trapped, Stephen King wrote this book while he was struggling with drug addiction. And I mentioned before that I had the problem with snooze, and I don't use snooze anymore, but it's such a powerful addiction, like to be addicted to nicotine, that like no matter how long I'll stay quit for, I might still have one moment 5 years from now where like I walk by a counter and I see a can of snooze and I just get this unbelievable craving. And when you're addicted to something like nicotine, you feel trapped sometimes. It's hard to break free. So Stephen King was addicted to, I believe, painkillers, and he wrote this nonfiction book, or I'm sorry, this fiction book about this. And it just really, I resonated with it. I thought it was fascinating that he could write about his experience this way. I found the book to be very suspenseful all the way through. And Stephen King usually kind of is terrible at writing endings, but I thought this one was fantastic. In my reading journey, I read a lot of Stephen King books this year. I read The Stand, which was like over 1,000 pages, like 1,300 pages. And all these books, it was just setting down a little bit of time. I had to commute in the morning, and that gave me about 40 minutes to read a book. And I recommend that. If you have a morning commute, whether it's an audiobook or a regular book, podcasts are fantastic. You can listen to my podcast. I recommend it. But there's something about taking something that's a longer form content, like 10 hours maybe to 17 hours to consume. There's something with that with your brain. And I think reading is great, and I think audiobooks are great. The reading is just the way it hits your brain, the way your brain can understand it is awesome. And the benefits you get are great. I feel like I'm more creative. I'm thinking about so many things. You know, in this reading more books, I was able to think about things more. I learned more. Even reading fiction, you're constantly learning things. It just makes you smarter. And I found enjoying reading books sometimes better than even films or any other content. I think it has a way of hitting you, and it gets your imagination going. And that's one of the reasons I'll never run out of things to say on my YouTube channel, is because I'm always constantly consuming new content. So this one I really loved, and I recommend. One of the best books I have read. Definitely the best fiction book I read in 2018. Now we're going to talk about audiobooks, and it's going to be nonfiction. I decided to go with the audiobook because I learned that it's like a audiobook / podcast, and that's going to be David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. If you don't know who David Goggins is, I recommend typing in David Goggins and Joe Rogan, and you can actually kind of see one of his interviews. He has a style where he uses a lot of harsh language. He uses the F word a lot and things like that, and that's the one negative people will give of David Goggins. For me personally, I think sometimes when you use bad words, I feel so silly saying that, but when you use language that's considered offensive, it hits harder. And this guy was in the military. He went through Hell Week 3 times in the Navy SEALs. He's run the Badwater race, which is like 145 miles in one of the hottest conditions. He's an ultra-endurance runner. He did it all with a hole in his heart. And his story is fantastic because his whole philosophy is the more you challenge yourself, like this, just that the human mind can do more. He once ran a race a 100-mile race without any training and running because he had to qualify for another race. He did it in like 20 hours, and when he thought he had nothing left, he still ran like 60 miles. And so talking about just the power of the human mind, it's something I can connect with as a runner, really how powerful our minds are. Like, this is the most powerful tool. That's why I do believe that, like, meditation is not something silly. Mastering this will just help you in all other aspects of your life, because this is the way we're consuming the world. The way our mind is how we're seeing everything. If you can get your mind straight and, like, solid, that's just going to help you out. Because so many people, including myself, it happens to me too, we'll try something and then we'll quit, or we'll tell ourselves we're not good enough, especially with physical stuff. When I ran my first marathon, one of the things that kept me going through it was not failing. I didn't want the people that said I couldn't do it to win. And you reach a point where your mind won't give up and your body realizes that you're not going to give up, and you find this second wind. So I definitely recommend the audiobook because he goes into so many different details, and it's just really, really inspiring. I really believe that this guy wasn't necessarily born with like a natural gift or talent. It was just straight up, he worked himself to death. He worked as hard as he could, and so it was fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and link those two books in the description below. I'm going to have Amazon links. I know that doesn't always work for Sweden and things like that. It does help me out if you click on them because it's an affiliated link. But in general, I know some of my audience is also American, and you can also use Amazon in the UK or some other areas if you want to. I typically maybe will order from eBay sometimes as well when I get a book, or Bookus.com here in Sweden. It is also very good. So those are my two favorites. Now let's go to the best movies of 2018. I gotta be honest, like 2018 I thought was kind of a weak year for movies. I haven't seen all the new movies coming out now that are going to be like Oscar nominated, so I can't comment on those. But I just felt like movies were kind of lame this year. They weren't as good, and it's kind of a trend we're going into with so many remakes. But I'll just pick two that I thought were fun. Now, the one that's so trendy, Bird Box, I actually really, really enjoyed and thought it was just a fun movie. I don't think it's the greatest movie ever, but if you have it on Netflix, I think it's a lot of fun to watch. I like that they took the zombie kind of apocalypse idea. It's not the same, but like I like that end of the world idea, and they've put a new take on it. That's one of my favorite genres in general. I love anything that does it. I love The Stand by Stephen King for the same reason. But anyways, the other thing that I really enjoyed, my favorite movie would probably be Mission Impossible Fallout. I just thought it was an awesome action movie. I love the stuff that Tom Cruise is doing there. The Mission Impossible series is just so much fun. Sometimes the James Bond series can be boring or hit and miss, and he's just been killing it with the action movies. So I'm interested, though, what your favorite movies were below, so go ahead and put that in the comments as well. And then finally, guys, my favorite video game of 2018 has to be, it didn't come out in 2018 necessarily, but I finally picked up Battlefield 1, and the campaign on there was fantastic. That's an honorable mention. So if you haven't tried that one, I just love the story. It got me so into World War I history and just really thinking about that war. I'm so passionate about World War I now from that. I started watching so many things and listening to podcasts about it, and I got really into it and inspired. But my favorite video game of 2018, even though it wasn't released then, was the original Tomb Raider 2013. If you got a decent PC, and you can run it, like not a decent, it can even be an okay PC. Like I'm able to get like 144 frames a second on normal graphic settings with 144 hertz monitor, and it's just a thrill ride to play this game. They did such a great job with it. I haven't finished it yet. I have a couple hours left, but I've had a blast, guys. I've had a blast playing this game. It's so well done, and on Steam sales and stuff, you can pick up the game for like €2, I think it is. And if you've never played any of the Tomb Raiders, because I haven't tried the new ones, you're not missing anything. It's not like newer video games have something on that. That's one thing I love about PC gaming is the older video games that you play, they run like a champ on your computer, and they're a ton of fun to play. So looking forward to all of that. So guys, this was my first attempt at having a podcast. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, hit that like button if you did. But for me, I just want to know if anybody watched this all the way to the end. So if you did, in the comments below, I'm going to give you guys a keyword. I want you to use the word shark. If you write the word shark somewhere in your comment below, I will know that you got it all the way through this video and you liked it. And then I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll see you guys on Wednesday for my Swedish content coming out. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope everybody out there has a wonderful weekend. And thank you guys for sticking with me and subscribing. Those of you that watch my content, it's truly amazing to me that I have an audience of people that care enough to know what I think. So it really does. It touches my heart. And that's all I wanted to say to you guys. I'll see you in the next video.